Wyatt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Wyatt, we are in a time where people are asking themselves, where does my food come from? And another question that people ask is, how much meat should I be eating? Should I be vegan? Should I eat meat from time to time? And if I do eat meat, should I care about how the meat is processed and is brought to my plate? And I feel that your book, Springer Mountain, kind of skirts around this question. It doesn't give us a precise answer, but it just makes us think about the food that we eat and how does it get to our plate. So I think you did a great job with that. But before we get to that, I wonder if you could tell us about your profession. I mean, one thing that I find interesting is that you were a food critic, and to be honest, many times in my past life I wanted to be a food critic myself. So I'll let you get started with that. How is it that you became a food critic, and then what is it that led you towards quitting that job?
It's a funny story. The whole reason I fell into food writing um, is that I was writing about the arts originally. I was a freelancer writing for like the weekly paper in Atlanta, and I would write about books and a little bit about music and a little bit about painting. And one of the things that you learn working for newspapers is that each section of the newspaper has a budget, right? The news section has a budget for freelancers, the arts section, the food section, the sports section, right? And so I realized at a certain point, I was getting about as many assignments as I could get from the art section of the newspaper, but I didn't have anywhere near enough money. And so I was in the office of the newspaper one day, and I just walked over to the food editor and I said, please, would you just give me an assignment? I need money. And the food editor was a brilliant writer, Besha Rodell, said, yeah, maybe we can make something work. And she gave me like a real softball Q&A with a chef, and I did okay with that. And we had coffee sometime, and she said, you know how to write, you're interested in the world, you have the things a reporter should have, but you clearly don't know anything about food. Not the worst thing in the world, but in a way that a lot of readers who read about food, they don't know anything about food either. So they need someone to translate the information of an expert to an average reader. So you're not necessarily a bad person, but you need an education. And so what she did was she gave me this assignment. Once a month, I would go meet up with a great chef from Atlanta at the grocery store with a $20 bill. And we'd buy whatever we could buy with 20 bucks, go back to the chef's house, cook dinner, and I'd write a little like puff piece profile of the chef and write down everything that they did to make the recipes. And it was sort of like a cooking profile series. And I did that for a little over a year every month. And it was a great food education. I fell in love with it. But what I found during that time is that all the culture that I was interested in writing about in books and paintings and music, all of that, it was just as much there in food. And that it was a thing that people actually had a specific relationship with. They had an enthusiasm for, because everyone, you might be able to go your whole day or I don't know, maybe years of your life without reading poetry. You can avoid it if you want to, I guess. But you have to eat multiple times a day, right? So it's this form of culture that we're almost forced to interact with. And I think because of that, a lot of people, maybe they don't think about it or they try to avoid it or whatever. But I found like what a great thing that everybody has this constant relationship to this culture, that it's all there. It tells us so much about what it means to be human or what it means to be from one place, whether it's Quebec or Louisiana or New York. All of these places are filled with so much culture and their food. And so I just fell in love with it then. I was in my early 20s. That was probably 15 years ago now. And it gave me a door into the world. It gave me a way to understand everything else through food, through agriculture, through all the things that are around that.
So what do? You go, let's say, Friday evening to a restaurant. Do you play a ghost client, or do you go with your
Mm.
credentials as a reporter? And then either way, you go to a restaurant, let's say the new chic restaurant around the corner, and you order whatever it is, and you try to feel the texture, the food, and the smell, and the presentation, and then write about it, or is that and how often? Once a week, several times per week, every time there's a new restaurant? Or do you get an
Mm.
invitation, or you just propose to review the restaurant?
So I'm no longer a restaurant critic. I left that job a few years ago, and maybe I can come around to why I left it. But when I was a critic for the Atlanta Journal Constitution, I was always always doing my best to be undercover.
Hmm.
Does that mean I always was? Maybe not. You hang around a town for long enough, people start to recognize you, and then you come up with like little gambits where you think, oh no, I'm going to get spotted and they're going to do everything different for me. Or they're going to be, one of the worst things about being spotted as a critic in a restaurant is they'll send over the manager and pretend like they don't know who you are, but they'll give you a press release length explanation of everything that comes to your table, and it's a miserable way to eat. It's uncomfortable. And both sides, they're uncomfortable about doing something wrong. You're uncomfortable because you can't just sit there and enjoy your food. And so it's really ideal for everyone involved to not be noticed. That's my belief. And I had a couple ways of getting around it. One was I was a regular, I would just go and sit at the bar and I'd wear a baseball cap and maybe actually dress a little bit more poorly than I would. Just try and, not really um, be the sort of client that somebody would intend to notice. And I would be able to order a few things and get an impression, but you can only get so much of an impression dining alone at a bar. The best way to really evaluate how a restaurant is doing is to be at a table of four where you can order an enormous amount of dishes and try many different things and see how they pace all of it. And what I would do if I felt like I was going to be caught on one of those nights is I would have my friends show up, three of them, and say, oh, our fourth party is late. And usually they would still be sad and they would order a few things. And then I would show up maybe just right as like the first round of drinks or like the first appetizer would be come around. And maybe I could slip by without someone seeing me. So those were a couple of my techniques of staying under the radar.
Well, okay. Well, just why I'm asking all these questions. At one time, I've been a blogger for almost 10 years, and I was at
Hmm.
one time a hungry blogger. So I thought, oh,
Yes.
maybe I can write critiques for restaurants and I can ask them for a free meal. So that was, now I wouldn't need to do that, this is an idea that went through my mind for over a year. I said, oh, maybe I could exchange positive blog reviews in exchange for a meal. But anyway, I'm past that. Okay, so great. Can you, I mean, we don't have a lot of time, but can you, in short, can you tell us why you quit?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, you asked how many nights a week was I doing that. And I was doing it probably 3, 4 nights a week. And I was going out and I was ordering too much food and I was writing these reviews that were fine. They weren't, I didn't think of them as art. I didn't think of them as a great accomplishment. They were decent restaurant reviews for the, Friday newspaper. And I felt like, you know, I felt I fell in love with writing as a way of interrogating, investigating, and exploring the world with deep curiosity, finding new things and coming back and trying to explain a little bit of what I saw in my writing. And over the years of being a restaurant critic, I found myself no longer being curious.
Mm.
I was no longer hungry for the food. I was no longer moved by it. I was bored. I was irritable. Um, and I knew I wasn't happy. And, I really thought, like you said earlier, like a lot of people, what a dream job being a restaurant critic. I thought I had landed into the thing that I would want to do for the rest of my life. And I realized at a certain point, no, no, this isn't right. And I don't think it would be a small thing to add into that I thought that there was something I didn't like engaging with that way in that way with the world. I'm not a fan of saying that I'm an authority and this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. I have a very strong sense of wanting to present, my individual experience and let someone else make their own um, relationship with it, read it and see how they would experience it. That's what I think about with, this book and with magazine writing, in general. I think we're in a time where people, the main demand for nonfiction writers is polemics, is arguments, is criticism. People like to read somebody who says, I am right and let me tell you why. And that's fine. That's absolutely okay if that's how somebody wants to do it. But that's not my work, and that's not how I want to engage with the world. I want to tell stories. I want to make observations, and so I just knew that I needed to dedicate more time to that kind of writing. It was a tricky road, like I'm in my late 30s now, and shifting gears in your mid 30s, as you may know, like trying to make a transition in your career is not easy. But I'm very, very, very glad that I did that.
Okay, well, you tell us in the book the thing that inspired you to go into hunting and find out where is your food coming from. Can you share with us that story?
Oh, I'd be happy to. One of my first times I would think I had been hired by Atlanta Magazine to be their like deputy food editor or something like that. And really what I was doing was I was writing the non-critical pieces for them. I was writing kind of like the puff piece, restaurant openings, little Q&As, editing little stuff for the magazine. And so I was invited to all of these sort of friends and family dinners, the sort of like free meals that you were talking about. And I was, just not doing particularly serious journalism, but it was a time that that a couple things had become fashionable. Southern food had become fashionable, and local food had become fashionable. It wasn't that long after Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma had come out, and there had been a documentary that had drawn on a lot of that called Food Inc. And so people were very much of mind about where their food was coming from. They wanted a name, they wanted a place. And these things, I mean, this was a while ago, but these felt new. They felt very fashionable. And so at all of these different restaurants I was going to, you would have the okra would be named like, Emerald Glade okra, or the corn would be Whispering Pines corn, or, the eggs would be this or that. And all of the chicken always was Springer Mountain chicken. And I had never heard of it before, but I had just consistently saw it on these menus being served at these restaurants. And I'd ask chefs, "Oh, where's Springer Mountain? What is this place?" And they would consistently tell me like, "Oh, I think it's this family-owned farm just north of the city. I hear it's really nice. I haven't been." And so I would hear from a lot of people who had known of this place or known of this brand, had a high regard of it. But couldn't tell me anything about it. And I said, well, I mean, that's my job, right? Maybe I should go there and find this thing, this place. And it took quite a bit of effort. It was odd. I found their website, but I couldn't send them an email. It was just one of those contact forms on the website. And so I'd send them a message from that, not get any response. They had like an 800 number, and I'd call it, and nobody would answer that. I left them a voicemail, no answer. And after a while, I was just kind of like beating my head against the wall about this thing. I couldn't figure out where is this place and why won't anybody get back to me? And I found a fax number on their website. And the fax number, when I cross-referenced it, happened to be the same fax number as this top 10 poultry company, Field Ale. And I said, wait a second, what's going on here? This seems something funny. So I called up the Field Ale offices and just asked to be put into their VP, this guy named Tom Hensley. And the secretary just put me into Tom. And we talked, and I said, hey, I write for Atlanta Magazine. And he said, oh, well, I've been a subscriber for Atlanta for a long time. What can I do for you? And I said, oh, I want to come see Springer Mountain. And he kind of chuckled, and I was like, that's weird. And anyway, I explained in the book, they ended up showing me all of what they did. And part of what they did and what they do well is marketing their chicken, right?
Right.
They invented a place and an image for it and a look and a story to tell. And it was one that was actually quite appealing to a good number of people. It sounds very nice. It's a great selection of words. It's, this idyllic area in the Blue Ridge Mountains that a lot of people have affection for. And I was a little bit offended to be tricked. I think most reporters, they want to get the straight story, right? They want to find out what's actually going on in a place. And when I found out what the truth of this place was different than how it was being presented. What it ended up leading me towards was I wanted to know, why did that trick work for me? Why did this set of words, why did I want to believe that this chicken had come from this beautiful place? What was that about that? And so, because I could not answer that question, I had to go on and do much more reporting. I had to go chase that question for a long time. And I went in a lot of wrong ways. I was learning to write a book for the first time. I was making a lot of rookie mistakes. But what I did was I just went as far down that rabbit hole as I could go. And that's sort of what this essay, this book is about.
Wow. Let me show you, to share with you. I discovered the same thing that you discovered about 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I trade in the stock market. I buy and sell stocks. And then one day I bought these stocks of this chicken farm, whatever, I forgot what was the name of it. And so I read the financial statements. And then in the financial statements, they said, oh, we also trade under, we market our products under this name, this name, this name, this name. It's like 50 different names. And so that stuck to my subconscious. And then next time I went to the supermarket, I saw one of those names of the farms where they grow these beautiful chickens, and they show healthy chickens running around the backyards or whatever. And I knew that it was all fake, it was all advertising, it was all marketing, because I read the financial statements a week before, and so I put two and two together. And then I have also a friend who spends almost all her money on buying the stories that she's been told about this product is organically grown in the mountains of whatever, and this other product comes from the private family farm, so this other place, and I know that is all garbage. So now my question for you is, from your point of view, how many people believe the story, and how many people know that it's just a story?
I think at the end of the day, a lot of us know things that we don't want to admit to ourselves. That's part of what I was writing about the book. We know that to have a delicious cheeseburger requires the slaughter of a cow, right? Many people would like to not think about it. I don't think it's necessarily wrong, by the way. I think it's something our species has done for as long as we've had a species. I think it's something that happens in the animal world all the time. But I think some of us are uncomfortable with looking at the reality of the world and how much death it involves, how much that's a part of the natural world. I think one of the things is that humans are deeply, deeply afraid of death. And so when we encounter it, whether and it's in our food, whether it's in stories, we behave a little bit irrationally. We think, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want it to be around it. I want to avoid it. So I'm just not going to think about it. But to get back to your question about the marketing, about the grocery store side of things, I would say this is what I found. I have been to actually incredibly well-run family farms that do raise chickens in pasture and do rotate their animals and do all the things to be great stewards of the land and great stewards of their livestock. And the truth is that is enormously expensive to do. To do it requires and just a inordinate amount of man hours, of physical labor. It's very, very challenging. And at the end of the day, it produces products that are 2 or 3 times more expensive than industrialized products, right? And the thing that happened in Whole Foods, that whole thing I was describing to you about local food becoming fashionable, about, more conventional or traditional agricultural methods becoming fashionable. Those farms had an opportunity. They got into the market. And what those grocery stores found every single time is that you could put 3 choices in front of a consumer. The cheap thing and the bright yellow packaging, bottom dollar price. The expensive thing, the real deal, the animals that were, raised with utmost care and utmost environmental stewardship. And then you could put a thing in the middle. And it would basically be the thing that was the industrialized product, but with a nicer packaging on it. And every single time, the thoughtful consumer would come and look at the 3 prices and buy the thing in the middle. And it's part of our economic system, right? We want to aspire to be a good person, but we won't do it to the fault of our own bank accounts, right? Or at least most of us won't. We might try to, a big thing about food is that people try to eat the thing that reminds them of themselves or the person that they want to be, right? Like the person who aspires to be a millionaire or thinks of themselves as a millionaire is somebody who spends the $200 caviar service at the nice restaurant, right? A big part of it is an identity thing, that you're that person that orders that. And for your friend who buys, wants to buy from small family-owned farms, that's the person that she wants to be in the world. And so she consumes that product, right? As a reflection of herself. This is a big part of what food culture is finding a reflection of ourselves in the things that we eat. And for the large amount of consumers, they want to be the person who's thoughtful, who doesn't just buy the thing that they know big agriculture is bad. So, okay, I'm going to skip that and not get the cheapest thing. But when you tend to the middle choice, the problem is that the industrialized companies got too good at marketing to that middle choice. It too much resembles the product on the far right without changing the practices. And so, at an earlier time when I was working on this book, I really thought this label or that label might be able to reform agriculture, that if you got, grass-fed beef, or if you got pastured poultry, and people to latch onto those marketing terms, that might change agriculture. And in my experience, that's just not the case. The language of marketing always eventually becomes marketing. And there's too much economic benefit for the companies to not find a way to do that. And that's an unfortunate fact of the world, is what I would say.
Well, I'm just going to share a short story that I have never shared before.
Hmm,
I grew up
sure.
in Colombia, and my grandmother
Hmm.
used to have in her backyard always 20 chickens running around, and she will feed them every day. Sometimes I will feed them every day. And one
Yeah.
day she asked me to catch one of the chickens and to kill it because that was
Hmm.
going to be our dinner. So
Hmm.
I ran around the chicken and I caught it, and she taught me how to kill the chicken, to turn their neck and whatever, and until the chicken
Hmm.
stop moving, and then to poke its feathers. And
Hmm.
I didn't stop eating chicken, but I didn't want to see that done ever again in my life. I didn't enjoy the experience of killing the chicken or chasing. Well, I did enjoy chasing the chicken because I was a little kid, but I just didn't like anything else of taking the feathers out, of seeing it just dying. It's just a horrible experience, but that's how our food comes to our plate.
Hmm. I think when people ask me all the time, what are the best eggs that I can buy? And I say the ones that, you can get from your backyard.
Mm.
And I feel that in general with food, that if you have the space and time to raise animals, I think it's such a rewarding experience, and that it will tell you what you don't like encountering, and it will tell you what you do like. It will tell you what you can grow comfortable with and what you can't. And I think, I kept chickens in my backyard for most of the time that I lived in Atlanta, much to the chagrin of my neighbors, which, because, that is not like the best smelling thing, and if you have a rooster, it's the most annoying thing in the world. Um, but these are good growing experiences. I think one of the horrible things about industrialized agriculture is that it has made us alienated from animals, so that we don't have those experiences. Many people, not too many generations ago, only ate the animals that were raised on their property or in their backyard or in their community. We are not that divorced from that. It's hard to imagine going back to a world where that was common practice, but I do think it is such a important way to learn something about the world if you can have those experiences. I love that you grew up with those experiences. I mean, they clearly stuck with you for a very long time, right?
Yes, yes. And I do like homegrown eggs, as you just mentioned. Okay, so uh, I mean, I don't want to abuse your time, but I would definitely would like to hear about the story of you going to Alaska and eating whale.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to tell it. Years ago, the northernmost town in Alaska is a subsistence whaling community that has existed there continuously for hundreds of years. That's been radically changed by petroleum production. That's where we found great deposits of oil, and so that has become, they call it the North Slope, a place that is kind of like a frontier town, one of the last frontier towns on our continent. And right there at the edge of the Arctic Ocean, there are a number of whaling crews of indigenous Inupiat folks who go out every spring, um, harvest whales, and then in the summer, when the ice becomes too unstable to continue to go out and bring whales on top of it, they divide the whales equally among the community, um, free of charge. There's no profit motive. It's simply, if you show up to what they call a nullicutuck, they will share a community portion of the whale with you. Um, this is all very fascinating to me. One of the things that we know about agriculture right now is that in one way or another, and I think it's a little bit more complicated than some of the articles say, agriculture is absolutely part of climate change, right? We know that it's changing the climate of this planet. What ways it is and isn't, and how we might mitigate it, all still up for debate, I think. Um, but one of the things about subsistence hunting is that it's a climate neutral way of eating. And for myself, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in 84. And the thing that I heard a million times growing up was save the whales. We have to stop eating whales. And I heard about what intelligent animals they are, which is very true. And what beautiful animals they are, which is very true. And how endangered they are. And which was, not to get too deep in the weeds, but that's also a result of energy production hunting from the late 19th century. We used to kill whales to produce oil to put in lamps and make many pre-plastic consumer goods. But anyway, so I had this in my mind. This one, on the one hand, this animal that seemed completely taboo and wrong to eat from everything that I had learned from a sort of general Western education. And then on this other hand, this community to me that seemed to be practicing, maybe as far as I can tell from my research, the most ideal culinary practice that I think could exist in the world, which is eating food specific to your place, sharing it with your community, not seeking profit, but seeking sustenance. These are almost like utopian ideals, I think. They're very, very hard to imagine in a lot of places. But here, I think, amongst a Native community, they were able to demonstrate it with purely through tradition. And so I wanted to go up there. I went up there in the middle of the summer where it's a time in the Arctic Circle where the sun never sets. So you have 24 hours of daylight. It's sort of a disorienting thing if you've never been in it before. And I sat down and I learned what I could. Did it really give me an answer about how we should all behave, how we should change our ways? I don't know, maybe not. But it was a very moving encounter to go and sit down at a Nillacutuck, eat these different parts of the whale, and understand that, maybe everything that you've heard about how you should eat and what you should do, we should be a little bit more skeptical about the easy answers.
Okay.
But even if you've heard your whole life, save the whales. Are we time to go? Time to go?
No. I just I remember I had a ex-girlfriend who studied anthropology, and we went to a community that they were sharing this meal, and I remember people eating this raw meat and stuffing it in their face and having their whole face full of blood because they were eating raw meat, of course. And like I couldn't my mind didn't digest what I was doing, so I didn't quite enjoy the experience. But I saw the community and the factor that no one is charging for this meat. Someone caught it, so a group of people caught it, and they bring it and they share it openly with everyone, which is, of course, it's not the case for our civilization here. But the whole thing of having a face full of blood and hands full of blood, somehow my brain never got past that, so I didn't really enjoy the experience.
Listen, encountering blood, I mean, I think it is a challenging thing. I will say, just as a culinary professional, or however you would think of it, I was quite moved by the taste of whale. I found it quite satisfying. But this was after already having worked at a cattle slaughterhouse, having spent a lot of time on chicken farms, having done clean deer quite a bit, and getting to myself deciding just on my own terms that these are actually things I'm comfortable with. And I think everyone should come figure out where that line is for them. I think it's worth looking at these practices directly rather than avoiding them. I think one of the horrible things that happens from industrialization is just this avoidance of reality, avoidance of the facts of agriculture. But anyway, it was a great experience.
Okay, I am quite excited about the new tendencies of what is it? cell-grown meat now, so people can have it
Oh,
both
yeah.
ways. They can eat meat and at the same time do all the things that are great for you. You don't kill an animal, you don't create all this pollution, you have it custom made to your taste. I wonder, as a person who analyzes and talks about food, what is your opinion about these cell-grown meats?
I'm fascinated by it. Everything I've read is very, very interesting. I like one of the ways it's been presented to me is meat without slaughter, um, which I think is just that concept alone very interesting. All of that said, I will believe it when I see it. I think if our concern about eating meat has to do with its adverse effect on the climate, one of the things that cell-grown meat is going to have to prove is that it can produce that meat without a massive use of energy resources. And from what I understand, the methods they're using require a massive amount of energy to produce. I might be wrong. I would love, I've actually said this in multiple interviews now, but if someone out there listening works for a research company that is working on this, please invite me. I would love to tour the facility. I would love to see what y'all are doing. I would love to write about it. You know, there's a lot of the science, as I understand it, is very proprietary right now. People are doing interesting research. I would love to see real world application, but you know, until it becomes something that can compete on the dollar with, you know, a steer raised in Georgia, it's going to be a long ways before that has a big effect on the way that people eat. So
And
I'm open to it. I want to hear it, but I just haven't seen it yet.
And as a person who tasted food for a living, I wonder what's your opinion about the plant-based meats like Beyond Meats and others. Personally, I like the Beyond Meat sausages and burgers, but what's your professional opinion about them?
You know, I've had some burgers that were lackluster, but fine. You know what? I really like the Impossible breakfast sandwich at Starbucks, and I've tried to figure out why is this one hitting the note? And I think it's like you said, the imitation meats work a little bit better when they depend on spices the way that sausages do to sort of add an extra flavor. And the truth is that like typical pork breakfast sausage is not that good, right? And so like if you have an imitation meat, it's not that hard to meet that level. Will, you know, Impossible or Beyond ever do something that, you know, replicates a great pork shoulder? I highly doubt it. But in the case of fast food, I think there's probably a great argument to be made to say like, hey, like the ground beef at Taco Bell, nobody's going to miss that if you replace it with you know, like an imitation meat. I think that's a great application for it, where you have something that's just sort of heavy on spice. There's not a whole lot of texture or flavor there anyway, you know. I think that's something that we should be looking at. How do we do that? But you know, they've got to compete not as luxury products, they've got to compete as economical products. And to me, if you're really trying to get people to adopt this stuff, you would have an Impossible taco that costs 89 cents at Taco Bell the same way the other product does. That would just be my estimation. But
Well, Wyatt, I like all the things that you cover in your book. You talk about factory farms, slaughterhouse, the killing floors, eating wells. I wonder if you could tell us one more time the title of the book and where can the listeners follow the work that you're doing?
oh, that's great. The title of the book is Springer Mountain: Meditations on Killing and Eating. Can be found anywhere books are sold. If you want to follow the work that I do, just jump onto Twitter. It's Wyatt_Williams on Twitter. I really appreciate you talking to me today. I had a great time chatting. This was fun.
Thank you so much, Wyatt.